este Masterclass, el cual está titulado Canadá, una mirada a la animación digital del futuro. Como todos ustedes saben, contaremos con increíbles panelistas el día de hoy. A continuación, quisiera yo presentar al profesor John Lee. Él es profesor y coordinador de programa en el área de efectos visuales digitales, animación y 3D en la Escuela de Comunicación de Centennial College. Entonces, without further ado, John.
Good afternoon. Hello. It is very nice to meet you all. And I just want to say thank you very much for attending today's masterclass. My name is John Lee. I am a professor and program coordinator for the Animation 3D and Digital Visual Effect program at Centennial College. I have been teaching at the college for over 10 years. And taught many different animation 3D and digital visual effect courses. I have over 20 years professional experience working as a design director, lead designer, 3D artist, pre-visual artist at many different studios in Toronto, in Canada. Here is some of the quick samples of the work that I have done in past, and hopefully this explains the kind of work that I have worked on in my career. Some of the work that I did primarily focused on visual effect for the movies as a lead designer, or sometimes I work as a pre-visual artist to building the shot, designing the different composition for the shot, and sometimes I worked on animation, and I've done many different positions throughout my career. So hopefully this will kind of give you some idea, and then getting into actual topic of today's class. Is the so having done my introduction, now is actually a good time to talk about today's topic. We'll talk about the animation production pipeline, pretty much how today's animation projects come together at the production environment. And in technical terminology or technical term, we call that process animation production pipeline. So what is animation production pipeline? It simply refers to the logical stage of a production required to create a visual effect and integrate them into a film. The efficient production pipeline is a must-to-have for any type of animation or VFX companies, as it effectively organizes each department so that every artist can easily identify their responsibilities or their roles, and a production can move along within a specified timeline. So I'm sure that many of you attended today's masterclass because you are genuinely interested in careers in animation or VFX. Having a good understanding of animation production pipeline help you understand what stages are required to create a production quality 3D animation, and understand what skills 3D artists will need to have at each stage. And more importantly, we'll also introduce you careers in animation, visual effect, and game industries. Before we talk about actually go deeper into our actual production pipeline in details, we should first take a look at the actual process of animation. So how is the animation? So what is the process of animation? How is 3D animation created in general? The 3D animation is the work of creating moving pictures in three-dimensional digital environment. In a nutshell, the process of 3D animation involves a three-stage: modeling, animation, and lighting. Okay, so if you're actually looking at here, each process animation can be easily divided up into big stage, modeling, animation, and lighting. Okay, so let me just talk about what are these stages. So what is modeling? The modeling is pretty much the process of creating the mesh object that are used to represent the physical element in 3D environment. This is done in many ways, including a traditional hard surface modeling, sculpting, and procedural mesh generation. So once that modeling stage is completed, then you quickly move on to animation stage. The animation is the process of adding a movement to the 3D object in a scene that are actors in the environment. The animation is added not only to the characters, but also to any part of the scenery, the 3D camera, or anything else that requires the movement on the screen. So once that the modeling and the animation stage is completed, then you quickly move on to the lighting stage. The lighting is the process of adding a illumination to a 3D scene throughout the addition of lamps, emissive materials, or image-based lighting with a high dynamic range imagery. Okay, just simply think of the lighting as the stage where you place the light in a 3D light inside of a 3D environment and creating the illumination look and feel that you like. So now, since we briefly covered the 3 stages of a 3D animation, let's take a look at how this process can be implemented into practical setting at the animation studio by looking at the actual production pipeline. So what you guys are seeing in front of you is the general overview of a production pipeline. Obviously, every studio has their own system or their own production pipeline. So it can be different depending on which studio you're going to, you're working in the futures. However, if you're looking at the overall perspective, overall view, they are so very similar to each other. So you will find a lot of similarities. Doesn't matter which studio you will be working or going into. Okay, so it generally starts divided into 2 big stages: pre-production and production stage. So if you're actually looking at the whole view, you start with a actual concept stage when you are starting to working on the project, and then you're actually going into the production stage where that's the studio is actually working on the actual execution of the project. So instead of me going over in details about each stage by looking at the overview in front of you, let's just take a look at the some sample examples. So let me just bring up the sample project with you guys, and let me share that with you so you have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So it starts with a brief and ideas and initial concept. So this is more of a kind of makeup project. Let's say this kind of more of the hypothetical situation where in many cases, usually the investors or client normally reach out to the animation or VFX studios with the potential project they have. And this is the time that they actually provide the information, provide a brief about the project, what kind of project they wanted to create. And then they usually sit down with the people at the studios and then start brainstorming the ideas. And this is when some general or rough sketch are created by the artist, or some brainstorm about the new ideas or talked about the script. Also, this is also a stage where that the budget is actually discussed, where the cost of how much it's gonna cost to create the project they're proposing. So what you think in front of you is the simple examples of the project. So let's say the client reached out to the animation studio and then talking about they wanted to create a 60 to 70 frames maximum length of animation with a story, some type of a spaceman character jumping down from the platform and then landing on the side of a seesaw, and then making another character jumping and hitting his head on the bottom of the block located on top of him. It's a very simple execution. So the client also provides some type of very simple art directions, like a look of both characters should be stylized, simplified in terms of design-wise, but it should be also have some realism to them in terms of textures and overall look. Environment should look like a kid's playroom, but excessive details should be avoided in order to have characters stand out more. This kind of pretty much explains that they want to have a more detail on the characters and animations, and they want to have very simple background. In that case, that the character stands out more. So some type of this type of discussion is being talked about and modified and then revised during this initial concept and idea stage, where there are many things is actually discussed. Once that initial idea and then concept stage is completed, then it's moving on to actual concept design stage, where the concept artist comes in and start to create some basic design of the characters based on the brief that was provided by the client. So many different types of, it's a lot of revisions or reiteration, update will be made, going back and forth between the studios and the client, and a lot of change being made. And this is very early stage, so anything is pretty much open-ended, so can be changed during the stage. And some of the orthographic drawings are also created, and this will be used for creating a 3D version of the characters. So once the character design or concept design stage is being developed, while this is on the process, the storyboard artist is also begin working on the actual drawing out the story on the piece of paper. The storyboard is usually storyboard artists come up with this visual representations of the actions within the script. So they describe the character motions and settings within the story and visually, and use the drawing to help define framing, layout, cinematography from shot to shot. So you can think of a storyboard as a stage where that it's kind of like a graphic novel or comic book, where that it's kind of showing the sequence of the actions and then telling the story visually. Okay, and some description is being added, some rough timing is also discussed, and this is kind of also the part of the early production stage that is also very crucial. So once that the concept design and the storyboard stage is completed, then you quickly move on to the motion test. We call that a pre-visualization. So this is the pretty much, think of it as the test animation. So I'm sure that at this point, the studio, in most cases, don't have actual 3D asset being created yet. So in many times, the pre-visual artist comes in and they're using the low poly or very simple model and do a very rough animation. So as the slide is explaining, the 3D artists create a low poly models and representation of the locations where the scenes play out. They work with the production team to set up the camera angles and block out the complex scenes ahead of time. So this will give the client the kind of visual representation of how the story will pan out. And this will also give you some idea to them, like in terms of timing and how long that certain animation is going to take place. So let me quickly play that out to kind of give you some sense of how that this type of pre-visualization will look like. It's very simple and very quick short animation. Kind of the character comes down, landing on the seesaw, and then impact the other character jumping up and then hitting the head on the bottom of the block. Okay, so this is what you call it kind of pre-vis, and this will give the client like an indication of the once again like timing and overall feel of the motions. So once that motion task or pre-vis stage is completed, now we are actually getting into the production side of the animation of the project. That involves starting with a modeling process that we talked about at the beginning. So this is a simple example and kind of show you how the character is actually being developed in 3D by using a Maya as using a specific modeling technique to create the character based on the concept design that was created earlier. So once that modeling stage is actually completed, then this model, fully built model, is sent it up to the texturing department, who actually begin working on adding colors and surface into it. So this is called texturing and characters. Okay. And this is actually done in the in Substance Painter. It can be done in Mari. Many different softwares available to provide you the look and then the color. Just think of texturing at the stage where you're adding a color into the characters and giving a life to it. So once the texturing process is completed, then you also, the modeling artist working on the modeling side, the modeling the environment, as we talked about earlier, it will be something very simple, some kind of playground feel to it. And then also at the same time, the texturing is also being done for the environment. Okay. So once that the environment texturing stage is completing, then we call this process as a rigging process. This is when just think of the rigging process as you adding some type of a system into the characters to make the character animatable. Okay, so once that the rigging stage is completed, then you actually move on to a layout stage, where this layout stage, you can think of the stage where you put together the layout artist comes in and based on the script or the description from the client and assemble the created prop, environment, and characters all put together into a single set. Okay, so once that layout stage completed, then you move on to the actual animation stage, where that animator is actually start to working on the actual animation by using the already existing characters. So let me quickly play out the animation. So this is some animation of one version of the animation being done without textures. You can see the grayscale image, and as you can see, just simply play that out. Okay, so once the animation stage is completed, then you move on to the lighting stage. So this is one of the examples. So this is a stage where you actually begin to placing a 3D light into the shot. There's no textures being added yet. It's more for testing the light, to checking out the mood and the brightness and exposures of the general feel of the animations. Okay. Once that animation and the lighting stage is completed, then you moving on to actual lighting and the rendering stage, where you're actually doing some actual testing with this actually, the scene animation that you see here is actually rendered in Arnold in Maya. And still, there's no textures being added yet, but just kind of testing out the animation and the lighting, and to see there's any artifacts or noise on, or any issues when you actually seeing that animation fully rendered out. And if everything is good, then you move on to the stage of doing actual final render. And this is the final look of the animation with all textures being added. And this is we also call the process where the compositing stage is also involved, where the stage once with the rendered out sequence, the compositor comes in and they're using a specific software like a Nuke or After Effects, and then put together everything that was previously rendered out. So you can see that the final animation being done. Okay. You can see the compositor assemble all the elements of the film, lay out them on top of each other in order to create the illusion that all elements naturally blending together. Okay. So this is pretty much, that's it for me. So this is pretty much kind of give you the quick overview of how the animation, 3D animation is being created and the production environment. And I hope that kind of give you some idea of what to expect and what stages are involved to create the work that you see here. Well, I hope that helped. And then once again, thank you very much for attending to the masterclass and then listening to my my portion of the class. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Lee. Muchísimas gracias al profesor Lee por esta presentación tan interesante.